Story 1. Be willing to walk away when your instinct tells you to. The problem with this advice and so much other advice is that you can tell people until you're blue in the face, but it won't be heard until they experience it themselves. Story 2. The things you ignore at the beginning will be the things that contribute to the ending. You cannot make someone change or want to grow. They have to want it for themselves. Story 3. Don't walk into a relationship thinking that you have to be the one to give all to the other person. You are worthy of being treated with the same love and respect you would give to others. It is a two-way street. Do not tolerate anything less. Also, reflecting on that, no, you cannot fix her. You are not a therapist. The responsibility to get mental help for those who need it is solely on the person themselves. Know your limit and do not be afraid to voice it when you reach it. Being supportive is one thing, but anything more will just ensure they drag you down with them if they will not accept outside help themselves. Story 4. More like a lesson from multiple relationships. People are not projects. It is not your duty to fix large underlying issues for people who do not want or are not ready for help, especially being able to receive love. Thus, do not date potential. Story 5. If someone breaks up with you, it's easy to be upset with them and blame them for hurting you. But if you allow yourself to be introspective, there probably are valid reasons they left and things you need to work on and do better in your future relationships. Story 6. Importance of trust and open communication. I realized that addressing issues early on is essential to prevent resentment from building up. I also learned to be clear about what I need in a partner and had to recognize patterns that I needed to change because I was not being the best version of myself. Story 7. Always have an escape fund that you don't touch and tell no one about. I started with $20 and added to it religiously. Use a coupon? Put the 25 cents in your emergency fund. Get money for a present? Same. 24 years later, I used it. Story 8. Not me but my son. You cannot be a single parent when your partner is behaving like a child. You cannot love someone enough to overcome their childhood trauma if they do not want to work on it. Story 9. You cannot help someone if they do not want to help themselves. You cannot be with someone if they are easily manipulated by their best friend. You cannot be with someone who does not respect your effort and love. You cannot be with someone if they do not want to grow with you. Story 10. The importance of not falling for your own preconceived image of someone before you get to know them. Go in with an open mind to who they may be and not a wishful picture based on who you think they are from their appearance, social status, and so on. I once dated someone who I thought by all outward signs checked every box of being my dream girl. That blinded me to a lot of really negative qualities and ended up making for a damaging relationship. And when that image I had built up finally cracked, it hurt a lot and for a long time. On the flip side, I later met a girl who I had the first impression wasn't at all what I was looking for based on what I assumed she'd be like. A couple of good conversations later, I found out who she really was, and now, after 3 years of marriage, that very person is who I still love. Story 11. I was fighting so hard for us to work, and then I realized that he just didn't really like me that much. Although it's such a simple thought, it really did change everything for me. Ladies, never settle. He has to choose you. If it's between you and someone else, he doesn't love you enough, no matter who he picks in the end. Story 12. Self-sufficiency is an infinitely better gift to give than solving all of their problems for them. Solving all of their problems leads to codependency. Bad partners want you to be dependent on them so that you are less likely to leave them. Great partners support your independence and self-sufficiency. You are staying not because you have to but because you want to. Story 13. That the people and friends that give advice to break it up are sometimes wrong. If you care and truly love the person, stay and only leave if you want to. You are the only one that has to live with that decision in reality. Story 14. Good sex isn't worth awful behavior. Let me repeat that for those in the back. Good, great, epic sex isn't worth shitty, abusive, cold behavior. Thanks for listening to my talk. Yes. Take note, look. Story 15. It takes two to tango. My last relationship taught me that I should not be the one to assume all the blame whenever something goes wrong. By all means, I should own my portion, but I should also let my partner have a chance to own up to theirs as well. Otherwise, I help create a highly toxic dynamic while depriving my partner of a chance to grow and for us to meet somewhere in the middle. I am proud of myself for the conversation I had when I ended things. During that conversation, I kept that person firmly in mind and only spoke on my portion of things. Story 16. One person cannot make a relationship work. Takes two people. And no matter how much you love each other, it doesn't mean that it won't take work. Just that it will make the work worth it. Story 17. First date should always be in a place with waitstaff. See how they treat them. The sex is not always worth the crazy. Live with someone for a year before you make any big decisions. Stacy's mom had it going on. So date the daughter and be happy for the future. Story 18. Boundaries. Boundaries in areas you were not aware you needed them. Do not end up in court if you can. And do not stay with someone who oversteps boundaries. Story 19. A big lesson I learned is that love isn't enough on its own. A relationship also needs trust, respect, and good communication to work. Just because you care about each other doesn't mean you're compatible or healthy for each other. Sometimes, walking away is the best thing you can do for both people. Story 20. I'd like to preface this by saying that I take responsibility for my own insecurities, but I believe partners should be accommodating of each other within reason. That said, if they are profoundly inconsiderate of your feelings and insecurities before dating, it will continue to be that way in your relationship. So basically, as stated previously, listen when they tell you who they are the first time. Story 21. Communication is one of the most important things. When you find someone who matches your communication style and values it as much as you do, it feels so good. Story 22. If you open up about something serious you are worried about and they shout at you, saying you are annoying them and that other people have it worse, you better leave. They do not care about you. They just want someone who entertains them. There will always be someone who has it worse, but if you cannot express yourself, it is not worth staying. Story 23. If you love somebody truly, you can fight for what you want and you probably should. But that usually means that you have to learn how to acknowledge, manage, and grow your own emotional qualities. You have to be the one willing to change to be a better person. The other person certainly plays a role and may be either dysfunctional or perfect. But once you learn what role you play, then what compassion and love you can afford yourself, and your partner has the power to control your destiny. Story 24. Communicate the big stuff and the little stuff. Good communication requires vulnerability and openness. It can be scary, but it sure beats waking up one day realizing you cannot stand the person in your bed. Story 25. Just because you wholeheartedly love someone doesn't mean that they are right for you. You can have the most pure, unadulterated, genuine love for someone, and they can have the exact same for you, and it can still not be a good fit. I learned that love is not the single defining characteristic of a great relationship. It's a top contender, but fit is also incredibly important. I had a long relationship in which we loved each other and sacrificed for each other. However, since our values, interests, and needs were a poor match, we were spending all of our time sacrificing for each other out of love and weren't attending to our own needs and wants. There was nothing toxic about it, and if we were a better fit, we would have gotten married. We ended tearfully, and we both had a lot of trouble moving on because there were zero bad feelings in the mix. Now we are both married to different people and are much happier since we found people that we love and that actually fit us well. I love my wife more than life itself. But the key point that makes it such a joyous relationship is that we don't have to sacrifice everything for each other's happiness. We find happiness in many of the same things. We still sacrifice for each other without hesitation, but it's not necessary quite so often as it was with the girlfriend I referred to above. Story 26. Do not live with anybody until you can see yourself with them forever. Pity is not a good reason to stay with someone. Verbal abuse is still abuse, and it is never to be tolerated. Your partner should never make you feel worthless about who you are, and you should never allow that. Story 27. X was a drug addict. I dealt with everything that came with that. He cleaned himself up during our relationship and then cheated on me. I learned that when you lack self-control in one area, it often translates to other areas. Be careful out there. Story 28. My ex spent 4 months of the pandemic living in her bathroom because there might have been a wasp in the living room, and the door connecting it to the rest of the house was open when she saw it. She had an arrangement with the DoorDash delivery people that was one step away from fashioning a pulley down the outside of the building. I persevered for years, but in the end, I was just being dragged down to her level. I vividly remember giving up my weekend to clean her disgusting mold pit of a house and getting screamed at for moving a sheet of cardboard incorrectly. It's an odd feeling to feel your love for someone snap mid-sentence. You can't love somebody sane. You can't make a crazy person see they're acting irrationally. Story 29. One of the most profound lessons I learned from a difficult relationship is that true love isn't found in someone else's words or actions, but in how you choose to love and hold yourself. For years, I poured myself into someone else's story, trying to find my worth in their perception of me and ignoring the subtle betrayals that slowly unraveled trust. But when everything fell apart and I was left alone in a silence that felt like the world's abandonment, I was given a gift I didn't expect, a chance to be my own solace. I realized that no one else can complete you, and searching for validation outside of yourself only deepens the ache. It's in the most painful and isolating moments that you come to understand the depth of your own resilience. The silence that followed the betrayal was not empty. It was full of an invitation to meet myself. I discovered that holding onto bitterness only ties you to the pain. Forgiveness isn't about letting them off the hook. It's about releasing the grip they have on your spirit. Loving myself was no longer an abstract idea or just advice I heard in passing. It became an act of survival, a necessity to reclaim my own heart. I had to let go of my fear of being alone because, in that loneliness, I found the truest connection I'd ever known, one with my own soul. Through this journey, I understood that love isn't something you simply feel. It's something you live. It's in the integrity of your actions, the compassion you offer to others, and the unwavering kindness you extend to yourself. Difficult relationships teach you, if you let them, that while others may fail to love you as you hoped, you can always rise from that brokenness and choose to love yourself fiercely, with all the wholeness you were searching for in others. Story 30. You break it, you buy it. Bulls in a china shop, be careful with yourself and them. Difficult doesn't equal bad, but bad is difficult. Learn to distinguish. Story 31. Trust your gut at the first red flag. You are not overreacting, and your mental and physical health depends on it. Staying with an abusive person for 7 extra years was my biggest regret. Story 32. That I had an inflated sense of myself and how good of a boyfriend I was. It wasn't until I met my wife and really put my all into a relationship that I realized what being a good partner really took. Story 33. That narcissistic sociopaths, 1. Do not really care, and 2. Do not really change, and 3. If you pay attention, they will actually tell you what they are going to do to you. Story 34. You are more difficult than your relationship. You have other things to worry about. Your partner is more, then you have to pause and still have other things to worry about. Story 35. Do not weigh their traits like this. Their humor can get on my nerves sometimes, but they are very intelligent, and I feel like I am the chosen one for knowing them. They are definitely a keeper. Story 36. Setting boundaries and knowing your worth. I realized that I shouldn't settle for less than I deserve, and that sometimes walking away is the best way to grow and become a better person. It taught me to trust my feelings, put my own happiness first, and stay true to myself no matter what. Story 37. If they are constantly bringing up their mental health to get your attention all the time, leave. What they do is on them, not you, and it is not your job to keep them from doing something. I spent 3 years getting guilt-tripped, no more. You are not personally responsible for anyone else's happiness or well-being, no matter how much you might love them. If they are treating you like this, they do not love you. Story 38. Sometimes you need to walk away before it keeps getting worse, even if it's hard. Plus, recognize your self-worth so you don't stick around people or situations that don't see it or care for it. Story 39. Relationships are supposed to be give and take. If I am giving 100% of the time and not getting anything back, then it is not going to work. Also, suicide threats are not my problem. We are adults, and I will no longer be chained to a relationship for fear they are going to hurt themselves. Story 40. That I'm not Superman. No matter how much I want to be, no matter how much my partner wants me to be, no matter how much I love them, and no matter how much I care. Story 41. It's okay to leave when you aren't happy in the relationship. If you know it's going to happen and you're waiting for a specific sign, just go. This sounds crazy, but in a relationship I was in, I had a premonition that it would end when I talked to a stranger who told me to leave. I was in that relationship for 5 years and always knew that it was going to happen. Took 5 years, but it happened and I left. I should have saved the time. Story 42. If they are showing you they are no longer interested, take the hint. I spent a year trying to win back affection, and all it did was lower my self-worth and make me resentful. Take the hint and trust your gut.